Hey, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unlimited Seating featuring candid conversations with female role models in the workplace. And today I am especially excited to introduce my guest, somebody who I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with, and who's been a really fun but really inspiring person to work beside. So please welcome Natalie Stone. Natalie is Vice President for Engine Alliance and Executive for the Widebody Program Management at GE. Hey, Natalie, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thanks for having me, Sanila. It's been fun working with you the last bunch of years, and I'm excited to be part of the podcast. I've been watching the series, and it's been phenomenally great. I'm so excited that you started it. So thank you for that.
Hey, thanks for the support. And of course, it's not possible without leaders like you willing to come and share their experience and inspire others to do the same. So, Natalie, I'm going to get right into it. I know your schedule is very tight. So, I was looking at your career journey, and the one thing that really struck me was your choice to go and be a mechanical engineer, and then you pursued your master's as well in mechanical engineering. Now, that was really interesting for me. So when I did my engineering, I did industrial engineering, and the year that I got in, the mechanical engineering department had 3 female students. So, and I think that's kind of the ratio everywhere, right? So, what made you pick mechanical engineering?
Yeah, it's pretty typical to not see that many females in mechanical engineering, but I loved it. And honestly, when I was younger, my dad was an attorney, and he wasn't really handy at like fixing things around the house. So if anything ever broke with like the cars or like the laundry machines or something, I just liked to tinker with it and usually had a pretty good knack at fixing things. And so when I went into engineering, for me, mechanical engineering like made a lot of sense because I felt like it was a little more hands-on. And I liked the sense of like designing structural elements and things that could carry weight, things like that. So that's kind of how I naturally fell into it. But you're correct. There's not that many women in mechanical engineering. I think there was like less than a handful in my class as well. So not a strong female presence, but I think it's growing, which is great. So hopefully we can inspire some other young ladies like your daughter and my daughter around the globe to consider mechanical engineering because we need good females in the space.
Absolutely. I'm kind of starting to have those conversations with her, but we'll talk more about it later. So, growing up then, Natalie, you said your father was an attorney. So who was your role model for kind of picking the career that you chose? Or did you have specific role models growing up or maybe early in your career?
Early in my career, for sure. I would say when I was in high school, looking at colleges, what I really wanted to do was journalism, and I was doing a lot of speech writing and public broadcasting. And my parents, who separated when I was quite young, the only thing they ever really agreed on was that I should go do an engineering degree because I could come out of school and actually like make money. And I like to tinker with things, like I mentioned. So I was like, all right, fine, we're going to try that path and see how it goes. And I would tell you, like my first year in college, I cried every day, my first semester. And I was like, I think this is so hard. I don't want to do it anymore, but I'm not a quitter. So I'm going to keep persevering. And once I got into the mechanical engineering core curriculum, I liked it a lot better. And then coming into GE Aviation, I was really lucky that I was in an engineering rotational development program, but our vice president of engineering was a female. Her name was Jeannie Rosario, and she really took me under her wing and mentored me. And I think, having that role model at a high level was really important coming into the company to say, hey, there are engineering female in leadership here, and really giving me advice around. There weren't very many women in engineering either. Most of the time I was the only woman in the room, right, for most of my career when I was in engineering for the first 10 to 12 years. So it has gotten a little better since then, but I think we all have to advocate for each other and find role models. Sometimes I was lucky enough to have one at the head of the division, but we've got to keep trying to find role models in different divisions as well across different companies. And I would say in different industries, because there's other industries that I have really great contacts in locally now, like pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of pharmaceutical sales reps that are more heavily female, right? And so we're kind of trying to leverage each other across different corporate and corporations and industries at this point. We have a thing in Cincinnati as well called 100 Wise Women. And I don't know if it's something that's going to grow globally, but we get together about once a quarter for what we call either a virtual breakfast or a regular breakfast. And we pick a women's topic, and it's a lot of different companies like Deloitte and Touche, Ernst & Young Consulting, Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, Kroger in Cincinnati, and GE. So it's been really great to expand my boundaries there as well, recently. And we've got a lot of young career talent, female talent in those forums as well. So I think you got to look early in your career for ways to connect with role models.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you got a great example of having the right mentors right along the way. And I just wanted to always remember, like when I had the opportunity to work with you, I think you're very supportive with female colleagues, right? And you're encouraging. And I think having that environmental support is so important to kind of make people feel welcome and feel that they can grow in the organization. I was looking at your profile. You were in engineering, like you said. I think you did design engineering. You were in supply chain. You said many times you were the only woman in the environment that you were working in. How easy or how difficult was it? Did you have to encounter stereotypes as you went along the journey?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I'm blonde too. So, I think it was very easy to fall into a stereotypical, like, okay, it's some young blonde in the room who probably, doesn't really know her stuff. I think for me, I always wanted to stick to in engineering, right? You stick to the data and you stick to the facts. Like I always wanted to walk in super prepared. And I think I always liked the idea of being underestimated, because then when you come on strong, people are so surprised, they're a little taken aback. Yeah. But I think definitely early in my career and still sometimes, I go to customers, I go to revenue share partners, different companies and different cultures look at women in leadership differently. And I would still say I still get some of the stereotypical type comments. And I get comments a lot that people will say, oh, well, I thought you're awfully young for the job. And I'm like, I'm not actually really that young. If you know how old I am, I don't feel like I'm that young in the job. So I think I still battle a little bit of that today. But again, I think I go back to, you've got to find role models and you got to support each other. Like women need to support each other in the workplace because we all are fighting some of these stereotypes and some of the different cultural elements in global business. So it's really important for us to continue to foster environments for each other that are supportive, for everybody's careers.
I have experience. How did you kind of deal with, or how do you still kind of deal with those stereotypes? And maybe early on and say midway in your career, did you find that it was, did you feel upset about it? How did you kind of overcome it and address it?
I think there were times I felt upset about it. I know I can remember very vividly in my 20s where somebody who is in a role like I am now that ran the program said, oh, we have to make her successful. I'm like, no, you don't have to make me successful. I'll make myself successful. But what I do need you to do is listen and give me honest feedback. And we need to have honest conversations around, like, I'm going to pull my own weight on the team. And, as a design engineer, I had responsibility to make sure that we got the parts designed and manufactured, and I was going to make sure I did that job well. And I didn't want them to go to like my team leader or another male on the team when they could be talking to me directly. So I think honestly, the best advice I could give people is if you feel like you're being, unfairly stereotyped, or maybe that you're not getting the proper due for the work that you're doing, to have honest conversations and lean in about it. And I think also, like, I've had very supportive male colleagues and bosses over the years where we've been able to have that honest conversation. And I'm like, look, this is happening and I just need some help to overcome it because it's not okay. And we all, need to have an environment where we feel like we can be our best selves and perform. Right. And so I think that's all I can really tell you is just be honest about it and try to find advocates around you, either male colleagues or bosses or female colleagues, like whoever you feel comfortable kind of working through it with.
So you mentioned feedback there, Natalie, and I think sometimes successful women, I think we tend to think that, you have it all, right? And if the interactions that we have had, it's very easy for me to believe that, Natalie has probably never taken a wrong step. Or made a
so
wrong.
Untrue. Let's just get that out of the way now. That is so untrue. I make mistakes every day. But no.
So any career choices or any decisions where you think that, hey, it didn't work out well, or maybe any feedback that really came as a shock to you that you felt you had to that you really addressed and took on board?
Yeah, I would tell you, I mean, if you look at my career path today on paper, it looks like it's some brilliant, plan and series of moves. And quite frankly, the reality of it was not like that at all. I would tell you that I took time off after I had my daughter, my firstborn, for a year. And I had to find a job coming out of it, which was not super easy. I went back to my network and I said, hey, I want to work part-time. And I got a great job in a JV with Honda as a systems engineer, and it allowed me to have career growth, but also flexibility to be home with my daughter part-time, because I worked really early in the morning. I'd work at like 5 a.m. till 3 p.m. And I had a really supportive boss that I had known for a long time and really wanted to invest in me and grow in me, and knew I wouldn't be a part-time employee forever. Then I had my son and I did the same thing. I came back with him at 6 weeks and then worked until we got done and certified on that product, and then took a year off. And again, after that, like, I ended up reaching it over into supply chain to some a nice woman who had been mentoring me and I had known a little bit. And she's like, hey, I heard you're looking around. I have this job. It's white space. No idea what it's going to be. Are you willing to, as an engineer, like, get out of your comfort zone and do something new? And I was like, absolutely. Like, I'm all in. I want to learn MRO and I want to learn repair more and supply chain, but I want to work part-time again. And she's like, okay. And that evolved into traveling all over the world in that role, and more full-time role coming out of it. But I mean, my career was never really planned out the way it looks on paper. It was a series of, hey, I want some flexibility. And I had some managers that were really supportive of that. And I was able to find some different career moves that still grew my skill set and rounded me out as a leader and a person. So then when I was ready with my son being in kindergarten to go more full-time, that's when I really went and accelerated my career. And I think actually having more different experiences and more broadening experiences really helped me when I made the jump into a more commercial facing role, commercial customer facing role. So I think, anybody you look at that you would say, hey, this person is in a leadership role or successful, you might find that the backstory with their career wasn't quite as elegant as it might seem on paper.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that, right? I think it's really interesting. And I think for somebody who has succeeded career-wise and who's obviously ambitious and wants to grow, I love that you made the choice to kind of take that time off, spend it with your baby, right? Use that time, but also you kept in touch with your network, which I think is something maybe that people forget to do. And keeping that network alive, reaching out to people, and like you said, saying that, hey, I am looking out for a job now. I think sometimes we find it hard to say. And ask for that help from the network. So I think you did that really well, and probably continue to do so. Just maintain that network and keep it alive.
Yeah, and I would recommend that for anybody. I still keep in touch with some of my former employees that have gone to other companies. And, just every now and then on LinkedIn, we'll send a message or an email or Christmas cards or whatever, and just really keep those connections alive. And even if it's just virtually doing a Zoom like this, I've done that with people as well. And then yesterday I just caught up with one of my former bosses, and she's external. She's doing board jobs now. And we were just trading notes on, translating what it looks like on the outside world, outside of General Electric and other companies. Yeah. And we caught up for an hour and it was great. I hadn't talked to her in probably like a year and a half, but I think really just keeping up those connections with people, especially if you're on the hunt for a role or you've been at home with a child and you're looking for some kind of a career transition, make sure you really continue to work your network and continue to build your network. And we have things now like LinkedIn and all kinds of different platforms, right, where it's easier to connect to people than ever. So definitely recommend to women out there to continue to keep in touch with the network and grow their network. And, as they're looking for their next opportunities, don't forget about that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Keep it alive. And you did mention that you had kind of mentors along the way. How important is it for you having that mentoring network? And I think I found this challenge with mentors, right? How do you keep the conversation going? How is it? What do you talk about when you're having a conversation with a mentor? So, can you just share a bit about, say, the mentors that you've had and what's been the conversation with them?
Sure. I think it depends on the connection, right? Sometimes you are assigned somebody and there's not like a spark there, right? And the personal connection isn't maybe as strong as what you'd like. And then the conversation struggles a little bit. I would say in situations like that, I always recommend like pick some kind of a topic. Like I've got a supply chain mentee that doesn't know much about the commercial structure of our business. And so we've been walking through commercial career profiles and potential of like, what does that look like? And how she understands this side of the business better, right? So I try to pick topics where it's like that. But I've also been fortunate enough that I got a mentor early in my career when I was in engineering. She's retired now, but oh my gosh, like I met her when her daughter was 5. Her daughter is now out of college and 25. We've been friends for 20 years and we still catch up for lunch like every couple months. And she's watched my kids grow, watched her kids grow. And it just we clicked from the start, right? And so I think with that kind of relationship, the nice thing is you can have complete honesty and, you can say, hey, I'm struggling with this and I'm not getting sponsorship. Like, how would I build my brand, my personal brand? And what does that look like? So I think, you can have different kind of mentors in your life. And I do the same with my mentees. Some of my mentees are assigned. Some I just picked up because I'm like, you are an amazing woman. Do you want to keep talking to me quarterly? Let's have lunch and talk about like being a working mom and how that looks when your kids are little and how that progresses when you get teenage age kids. So I think for me, if it's a sign and you're struggling with the relationship, I think about some kind of career topic that you want to talk about or something that you might want help with, like sponsorship or navigating certain types of meetings or environments. And if it's something that it's just coming natural and it's clicking, just try to find a way to be the most honest with the things that you're struggling the most with from a personal and professional standpoint and, lean on them.
Yeah, I like that you said, ask if you're having challenges with sponsorship. I think that is a challenge that women do face at some point in their career when they're trying to grow, especially. And I think what you said makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we shy away from it. I think because it's a tough thing to say, hey, help me with sponsorship. But I think it's really important for women, especially as they're growing in their career and probably going from to the next bigger role. The sponsorship is so critical. And I really like your suggestion of, hey, it's okay to speak with a mentor and say that, hey, I need help with sponsorship. What can I do and how do I go about it?
Yeah. And I think, we're talking about sponsorship, right? I've had great male sponsors and advocates, and I've been really lucky with that. But I think, it's not always easy and it's not always organic. So I think one thing I've struggled with that I haven't done well for a lot of years and I'm doing better with now is it was very unnatural for me to just like put half an hour on some leader's calendar to talk about myself. Like that's just it seems like a selfish act, right? But I think that we need to recognize that men network in all kinds of different ways. And, when there's an environment where there's not very many women around, we have to find ways to network with the male colleagues and the sponsors that we have as well. So I started doing that more, but I picked topics like of interest that I want to solicit advice and input on. And then some of those have grown into more of a mentoring relationship formally. And then those kind of folks have become sponsors really too. So I think I've noticed that it's harder for me as a woman. I think some of the women that I see in leadership, like we just don't go out there and like try to promote ourselves that way and go put the meeting notices on the calendars and stuff. But I think I would advise most women to try to do that, right? Like, don't be shy about it. If there's somebody that you really look up to from a career standpoint, like put half an hour on that person's calendar and go talk to them. And you never know what's going to come of it. You may end up getting a sponsor out of it.
Absolutely. You did talk a lot about, you mentioned your kids here and there, and I know you have a busy and a job that really involves a lot of travel, right?
Yes.
I won't say how do you balance, because I don't think there is a balance, but have you found that a challenge? Have you thought about, hey, I need to maybe take it slow or find a different option which makes it easier at home?
Yeah, it's a challenge. And I think I would tell you, I tell a lot of people you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. So there's always something that's got to give in the equation. As my children have gotten older, it's gotten a little bit easier on the travel, the global travel that I have. Because my daughter's now a teenager and she's a little more able to help. She's more self sufficient. She can even help with her brother a little bit. But I mean, I'm fortunate to have a really supportive partner in my husband. And we had a fantastic nanny when the kids were little and totally reliable, would always show up, like really helped me hold the household down. And my children are still very close to her. And I mean, she really was like their second mother. And I was so grateful to have her in our lives because it made me be able to travel and not have to worry about what was going on at home. I think that's the hardest thing when you don't have a good support network or you don't have someone at home that you feel like, okay, I don't have to like worry when I leave my children or my home. So I was really fortunate to have that. And now my husband has just been really great about helping with the kids. I mean, we don't have family in town. It is still a struggle. He has given up a lot in his career and a lot of, he does not travel for work, even though he does work for GE and consciously has not done that because I've been on the road so much up until COVID hit and now I'm back on the road again. So I think for us, the balance is, one of the two parents travel, but somebody's got to be home too with the children. And, I've missed a lot of first days of school. There's things that I definitely regret that I wish I could have been there for, but I've never missed a birthday and I've never missed any like major graduation or that kind of event. And I keep trying to hold myself accountable to that and to my children. Yeah. And, having a teenager is humbling. So I will say that if I'm not doing it correctly, I will definitely hear about it.
You get instant feedback. Oh dear. Natalie, I attended a discussion earlier today. We have the Global Aerospace Summit here in Abu Dhabi. And I joined a discussion. It was with the different industry leaders, and the topic was around how do we increase gender diversity in the aviation sector. And I think it was a bit more targeted regionally as well. And as a personal example, I've been recently hiring for a field service engineer role in my team. I had 350 applicants. Out of which I had maybe 4 female applicants and with not the relevant experience. It's a huge challenge, I feel. Is that as a hiring manager, do you see that as well? And what advice do you give to kind of, probably it's not something that you can do for the next role that you're opening tomorrow, but what are some actions you think we should be taking to kind of keep up a good pipeline of female candidates?
So I think it starts early on with some of the corporate sponsored STEM activities and making sure that we're getting women into the engineering field and into the aerospace field, right? So I think that's the first place that it's got to start. Because if you don't have a good pipeline of candidates, then you don't have individuals that you can slate like you're mentioning, or you might only have 4 out of 350. So I think it's got to start with the support, both from a corporate standpoint and a personal standpoint with the younger women. And then I think, my personal standpoint is like, I always want to try to have a woman on my staff or competing for a job on my staff, but sometimes you're right. You just don't get the candidates with the right experience. So I think my vantage point on that is I continue to try to build my network in the aviation industry. And that goes beyond just like where I'm working currently as a corporation, but like the Engine Alliance JV, I know quite a few women in the Pratt & Whitney Corporation, right? And that's just, we talk about the same thing as like, how do we get women up through the system? But I think a lot of it's the, continuing to mentor and build women and try to help them with their career journey so that they're getting the right relevant experience so that they can compete for that role or the next leadership level, right? I think it's very critical that we're helping each other make sure we're making good career moves and building the base. But it'll always be a challenge. I think it's definitely a male-dominated industry. I think we just got to continue to try to get women through, from early on interested in aviation and get them through the system. And then try to be very cognizant of when we're hiring slates and stuff, scanning our network and even asking the men around us, like, hey, do you know any women that will be able to compete for the role that might have the right skill set? It might not be in our current corporation. It might be, in something adjacent, but I think that there's some, skill sets that you could utilize as a base to then bring them into the aviation industry. And then there's other things that they can learn on the job.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. And as I was sat in the discussion today, I really thought that it's things that you need to start doing should have started doing 5 years back to start getting the candidates today, right? But it's not just putting the posting and then also asking the network, but like you said, we need to start laying the groundwork now, like working with schools, getting girls encouraged in STEM. My daughter and I were just having the conversation the other day, and she's like, "Oh, I don't think I'd pick a." She's talking about one of the STEM subjects, and I was like, "Why do you say that?" She's like, "Oh, I don't think I'm interested." I said, "It's too early, right? You need to explore all the subjects and never rule out STEM, because that's where the jobs of tomorrow are going to be." So
Absolutely.
if you rule out STEM, so if you want to live a good life, focus on STEM and try and pick a career in STEM, because that's where the big roles and opportunities are going to be. I think we need to give that message, and that kind of opened my eyes. It's like we need to be telling girls this at a very early age, that that's where the opportunity is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the schools are doing better too. I think even globally, and there's different schools and cultures that do it better to encourage women. But I think I see it more broadly across the world that women are starting to look at that more seriously, and parents are starting to push them towards that too, right, and supporting them. So I'm in the same conversation with my daughter, who quote unquote hates math but really likes science. So I was like, let's try biology, and she's starting to get interested in nursing. I'm like, great. Like I want something, but don't rule out engineering just because you think you hate math right now. Like you might want to reconsider, like until you take a couple more classes in high school on some of this stuff, like you shouldn't necessarily rule it out just because you have this like stereotype around it being guys and around it being harder or something that you might perceive that you might not like. You got to be kind of open-minded about it as well.
Absolutely. Natalie, you started off as a design engineer, moved to supply chain, and you took on roles of increasing responsibility. Do you think your kind of your leadership style evolved from where you started to today? Right? Can you, and then some of it was conscious, like you really said, I need to maybe tone this down, highlight this a bit more.
Yeah. Definitely. I think when I was younger, I was like super perfectionism, aggressive, right? Like I probably drove my teams too hard and probably, frankly, drove them absolutely nuts. I don't think I would have wanted to work for me then, frankly, when I was a design engineering manager. But, a certification, it was a tough environment. But I would say, like, as I've evolved and I've had bigger teams and I've had more global content, for me now it's more about stepping back and empowering my teams. I mean, and I tell them, you have it 95% of the time, the 5% of the time that you want my advice on strategy or you want to kick the tires on something, my door's always open, right? But I'm hiring you because you're completely capable to do the job, and I'm excited to see you grow some new skill sets, right? And so I think there's a natural evolution that happens, like as you rise in leadership or your job becomes more expanded or bigger, and you can't possibly do it all. So you absolutely have to hire good talent. And then, I think your job as a leader at this point then is to grow new leaders, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at now is, a big part of my job that I should be spending time on is development of my people and mentoring and developing the broader team around me so that we've got the next generation of leaders. And frankly, then when I do travel for work or whatever, and I have to step away, they got it. And I never have to worry about it because they've been having it the whole time. I'm not like, trying to be a barrier to their success or to be like a one-stop shop for every decision that needs to be made. And I think we're stronger with teams that work well together. So I spend a lot of my time with my staff and our staff meeting around how do we support each other and what topics can we bring in that might affect all of us that we might not be aware of, right? And we kind of use it as a learning opportunity rather than just, hey, I'm flowing down information, you're catching. It's more of a conversation, and we go around the room and talk about, kind of what's bothering or, problems that we couldn't solve by ourselves and we want input on it, things like that. So I think that's the evolution that naturally happens with leadership. And I think the higher you rise, the more responsibility you have to grow the next generations of leaders and making sure, especially as women, that we're pulling people through the pipeline. And I'm so blessed. I feel so lucky. We have a president of our commercial engines business, Kathy McKenzie. She's been a fantastic mentor and supporter and advocate for me. And she started the Commercial Women's Network. So we're doing that more broadly globally with reach there now. And It's great. I mean, in commercial, there's a lot more women, and it's pretty exciting. I'm not the only woman in the room anymore. It's like fantastic. And we're so supportive of each other. I'm so lucky. It's a big part of what really keeps me here is that group of women who, we have bad days, we call each other, go out for a drink, whatever, but we're there. I have a support system to go, man, that was rough today. Like, have you ever been through this before? Like, and we're trying to lift each other up when we have our bad moments. It's really important to have that network.
That's great. That's great to hear. We need more women here as well.
You do. But you're one of them, girl. You're going places. And I'm so excited and thrilled you have the big job that you have. We've got Zaina in the office too. We need some more women in the office over there too. But I'm so excited that you guys have the roles that you do. And I know you're going to be continuing to try to grow that network and to try to grow, bring in more female talent in for sure.
Absolutely. Natalie, I guess, sorry, 1 second. I think I have 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
I do want to hear kind of your personal brand, right? How conscious were you building that as you went through your career? And you talked about, talking about yourself, talking about your achievements. Is that as well a skill that you kind of picked up over the years? I still do think that a lot of women have challenges talking about themselves, just like you said, sharing achievements. Any tips or tricks there that you can share?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I watched one of my mentees do one time in a meeting was she said like, oh, I'm part of this GP team. I said, no, you are the GP services person, right? Like lean into like what you really are bringing. I think as women, we tend to rely on, hey, we've got this great team. And that's important too. There's a time and a place for that as well, right? But don't be afraid to lean into who you really are and what you're bringing to the table. I think that'd be my first message of advice. And I think number two, from a personal brand perspective, for me, it was always number one was high say to do ratio and that I'm delivering for the business. It all starts with that. You have to have that as your basic foundation of credibility, and then you can grow everything else from there. And I would say beyond that, what I'm currently working on is really trying to make sure that I'm known as a leader that grows other leaders and grows people's careers, because then naturally you're a talent magnet, right? People want to come work for you because they know you're going to that I'm going to develop them and that they're going to continue and rise in their careers. So for me, that's kind of an important aspect of my brand that I'm trying to build now. And just really being an inclusive team leader and having, reach around the globe with mentees like yourself and people that I interact with, and how can I help them and help them with their careers more. That's kind of what I'm starting to evolve into, is really making sure that I'm bringing a whole team along with me, that it's just not me in a job or me progressing through the system as I'm, getting new career opportunities, that I make sure that I bring people along for the journey with me.
Great. Natalie, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation as always. And thanks for taking the time and for sharing your experience and your advice.
Anytime. Thank you for bringing this awesome podcast to the world. I follow you on LinkedIn religiously, and I'm just so proud of what you've done. You should be so proud of your accomplishments to have started this and have, thought of it, and just the initiative that you show and the guests that you bring. You should be tremendously proud of yourself. And thank you for doing this.
Thanks a lot, Natalie.
Have a good rest of your day. I'll see you later.